Employees sharing their payslips and other conditions of their employment with their fellow employees can cause much unhappiness and disruption in an employer's workplace. But can an employer take action against an employee for doing so? This is stuff employers should know.
Welcome to Stuff Employers Should Know, the podcast navigating the legal complexities of South African employment and labour laws. Proudly brought to you by LabourNet, management's ultimate HR solution.
Hey, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Barry Gordon-Davis, and their sound producer and episode editor, Yas like it Ismail. So, Yas, what's your hourly rate? Tell me, what's your earnings from this gig?
Well, since you've asked so politely, take a look at this.
So you actually have it with you handy, all right? So you're handing me a piece of paper. Let me have a look. What? That's insane. I seriously need to talk to somebody. I'm clearly getting ripped off from this. I'm out of here. This podcast, the episode, I'm out.
Let's just talk about this, dude.
So as Yas and I have demonstrated, and I know we can definitely put our Oscar hopes aside, is what can happen when employees get a talk-in and a comparing of their salaries or other benefits, especially when it's employees that do the same or similar thing. This episode is another short one, but it's very relevant, as I believe that this is a situation that many employers find themselves in. And this was reiterated in an article that was written by Audrey Lowe, a senior industrial relations consultant at LabourNet, and I felt it necessary to put it out there. So this episode is largely based on that article, so giving credit to Audrey.
100%. Thanks so much, Audrey.
There is a common practice amongst employers of including clauses in contracts or implementing policies in the workplace which prevent employees from discussing their conditions of employment with their colleagues or other parties. And often non-compliance is then considered to be a breach of confidentiality. Now, we understand that the rationale behind such a requirement by employers is often to prevent employees from discussing their salaries with each other, which then would ultimately prevent a possible disharmony where discrepancies in earnings exist. If they do discuss salaries, it may result in employees confronting their employers if they feel that their salaries are unfair, and may even raise cases of discrimination on the basis of equal pay for work of equal value if there are discrepancies which are not justified. So the questions that we need to ask, is such a clause valid and can it be enforced? In other words, can an employer find an employee to be in breach of such an agreement, even if there is an agreement? And can they take action where the employee is then accountable for possible discourse caused in the workplace as a result of them breaching or discussing their payslip with other employees? Okay, so the simple answer is that Section 78 Subsection 1, Paragraph B of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act provides that every employee has the right to discuss his or her conditions of employment with his or her fellow employees, his or her employer, or any other person. This falls under Part C, especially for the protection of employees against discrimination and the rights that are afforded to employees. So this would include all conditions of employment, including remuneration, working hours, overtime, benefits, and other working conditions. These may be discussed in terms of this clause with colleagues, unions, government officials, family members, amongst others. So parties may not agree to terms in a contract that contravene legislation in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. The rules or policies of the company which are contrary to the Act will not be enforceable. So as such, employers will not be able to charge employees for breach of contract, breach of confidentiality, or insubordination if they discuss their conditions of employment with somebody else, even if there is a clause in their contract or a policy expressly forbidding them to do so. Obviously, the exception to this is confidential information that an employee passes on to a competitor, which may harm the company's protectable interests. Then they would be able to take action against that. So employers are advised to ensure that employees are treated fairly and to go through their policies and practices, ensure that there is no unfair discrimination in the workplace. And when we talk about equal pay for work of equal value, and I know this is most likely going to be an episode on its own, Differences in remuneration for employees performing the same or sufficiently similar work have to be justified, and there are many grounds, but just for example, seniority, length of service, qualifications, ability, competence, performance, and quantity and quality of work provided are many of the variable justified grounds that we will then most likely discuss in an episode focused specifically on equal pay for work of equal value. So that was a short and sweet episode of Stuff Employers Should Know. As always, get in touch on social media or drop us an email at sesk@labournet.com and let us know what topics you want us to discuss. It really helps us improve and push out quality content that you want to hear. So from myself, BGD, and Yas, till the next show, stay safe and cheers.
Barry, can I have my payslip back? Dude, Barry?
Stuff Employers Should Know was proudly brought to you by LabourNet, management's ultimate HR solution. For more episodes from Stuff Employers Should Know, go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you play your favorite shows. Case law or statutes referenced in the podcast are current at the time of recording.